There is a growing realization, one that's beginning to echo across scientific journals, philosophical debates, and metaphysical circles alike, that consciousness is not just a passive receiver of experience. It may be the very architect of reality itself. For centuries, we've been told that our brains produce consciousness the way a factory assembles machines, a byproduct of neural activity, electric impulses, and chemical reactions. You think because neurons fire. You feel because hormones fluctuate. And everything you experience, from joy to sorrow, meaning to memory, is supposedly the accidental result of biology running its course. But this narrative, while compelling, is starting to crack. Quantum physics, one of the most precise, well-tested sciences in human history, has introduced something utterly unexpected into the conversation. Uncertainty. Observer influence. Non-locality. A world where particles exist in multiple states until observed. Where entanglement allows instantaneous connection across impossible distances. Where time doesn't always run in a straight line. And here's the part that changes everything. At the center of all this mystery is you. Not your body, not your brain, but your awareness. Across the globe, researchers, physicists, and consciousness theorists are beginning to take seriously an idea that was once confined to mystics, yogis, and esoteric traditions. That consciousness is not inside the brain. Rather, the brain may be a receiver or filter of consciousness, like a radio tuned to a particular frequency in a much larger field. This video is going to explore that idea in a way you've never seen before. Not as speculation, not as science fiction, but as a rigorous, balanced, and intellectually honest inquiry into the science and spirit of awareness. Here's what you can expect. You'll encounter some of the boldest scientific theories on the nature of consciousness. Ideas that propose your mind operates at a quantum level, tapping into an underlying fabric of reality that defies logic but demands attention. We'll break down the Penrose Hameroff model, explore quantum brain dynamics, and unpack what it means when researchers say that your conscious observation can influence physical reality. You'll also be introduced to metaphysical principles that have been whispered through human history, insights from ancient traditions that seem eerily aligned with modern discoveries. As we walk through this landscape, science and spirituality won't be opponents. They'll be partners pointing toward the same profound truth, that you are far more powerful, far more connected, and far more significant than you've been led to believe. And this isn't just about knowledge. It's about application. Throughout this series, you'll learn practices rooted in quantum-aligned living, techniques designed to align your awareness with the deeper layers of reality. Meditation, visualization, intentional focus, these are no longer just wellness buzzwords. They're keys to unlocking how consciousness can affect the probabilities of your life. By the end of this journey, you may come to question everything you thought you knew about the mind, the self, and the nature of existence. And you'll walk away with tools to transform not just how you see the world, but how the world responds to you. Let's begin where all profound change starts, with the doorway to a new paradigm. For centuries, we've been conditioned to think of the mind as a screen, something that projects meaning onto the raw input of external reality. Light hits your retina, sound enters your ear, and your brain supposedly converts this data into experience. That's the model you've been handed. But quantum theory, and a rising tide of consciousness research, tells a different story. It starts with a troubling observation. Particles at the quantum level do not have fixed properties until they are measured. Before that, they exist in a probabilistic state known as a superposition, a range of potential outcomes. It's only when an observer intervenes that the particle chooses a state. This isn't philosophical metaphor. It's confirmed through repeatable, peer-reviewed experiments. So the question becomes, who or what is the observer? And even deeper, why does observation have such power? Traditional physics has tried to sidestep the weirdness of this with various interpretations, but none have satisfactorily erased the central role of the observer. And this brings us to the first crack in the classical view, that maybe consciousness isn't just passively recording reality. Maybe it's participating in its formation. This is the quantum doorway, not a portal to fantasy, but a shift in perspective so radical, it demands you rethink the very mechanics of life. Let's look at one of the most talked about theories in this space. Orchestrated objective reduction, known as Orch-OR, proposed by theoretical physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff. Unlike theories that treat consciousness as an emergent property of complex computation, Orch-OR claims that consciousness arises from quantum-level processes inside microtubules, tiny structural components inside neurons. These microtubules, they argue, can maintain quantum coherence, a state typically destroyed quickly in biological systems. If true, your conscious awareness might be tapping into quantum dimensions of reality in real time. This theory doesn't just challenge materialist assumptions. It introduces the idea that consciousness is woven into the very structure of the universe. Not a side effect, but a fundamental aspect. Still, Orch-OR is just one model. Others have proposed that the entire brain acts as a quantum processor, or that consciousness is a distributed field that interacts with the brain but is not confined by it. All of these perspectives challenge a central dogma, that the mind is purely the result of mechanical processes. Let's pause for a moment and consider the implications. If awareness is not confined to the skull, if your consciousness is entangled with quantum processes that operate beyond space and time, then your very perception could be entangled with the reality it perceives. This is not fantasy. It's a logical consequence of what quantum mechanics has already shown us. That measurement changes outcomes. That uncertainty and possibility are baked into existence. And that consciousness seems to play a unique role in collapsing those possibilities into a single experience. This is the shift we're stepping into. A world where your focus isn't just a spotlight, it's a steering wheel. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your attention, they may not just color your reality. They might construct it. This also begins to explain phenomena long labeled as fringe or unscientific, like synchronicities, manifestation, energy healing, and deep meditative awareness. These could all be seen as effects of consciousness interacting with the deeper quantum structure of reality. It's no surprise, then, that ancient systems of knowledge, whether Vedic, Hermetic, or indigenous, have long claimed that the mind creates reality, that intention shapes outcomes, that you are not merely observing the world, you are engaged with it in an intimate and creative way. Modern physics is now brushing up against that same idea. So how do you begin to understand yourself, not as a thinking machine, but as a conscious force embedded in the matrix of the cosmos? You start by unlearning the story you've been told. You start by seeing observation not as passive, but as potent. And you begin to treat awareness itself as the primary lens through which the universe becomes real. This is the gateway to a new form of understanding. One that does not separate science and spirit, but sees both as expressions of the same truth. And once you step through this gateway, there's no going back. Next, we will explore the model that takes this even further, the Orch-OR theory, and how Penrose and Hameroff have shaken the foundation of both neuroscience and physics with their radical proposition that consciousness may be collapsing quantum wave functions, and that your awareness may be actively sculpting reality from the quantum ground up. The human brain is often compared to a computer. It's a metaphor most people are familiar with: complex wiring, rapid processing, inputs and outputs. But that metaphor starts to fall apart when we look deeper. Computers, for all their brilliance, remain deterministic. Given the same input, they produce the same result. They don't experience. They don't feel. And most crucially, they don't know that they exist. So what separates a silicon-based processor from a conscious human mind? This question has haunted science and philosophy for centuries. And it's here that one of the boldest theories of consciousness comes into focus: orchestrated objective reduction, or Orch-OR, a model that doesn't just tweak the current paradigm. It rewrites it entirely. Proposed by theoretical physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, Orch-OR begins with a core claim that consciousness is not an emergent property of brain complexity, but a fundamental feature of the universe itself, revealed and orchestrated through quantum processes within the brain. Let's break that down. At the heart of the theory is a tiny structure found inside your neurons called the microtubule. These microscopic tubes were once believed to merely serve as scaffolding for the cell. But Hameroff proposed that they do far more than hold the brain together. He believed they could act as quantum channels, structures capable of sustaining quantum coherence. This is important because quantum coherence is the foundation of quantum computation. It's the phenomenon that allows particles to exist in multiple states simultaneously until a particular state is resolved. If microtubules in the brain can maintain this kind of superposition, they could be engaging in quantum processing. But here's where Penrose's contribution shifts the theory into radical territory. Penrose argued that reduction, or the collapse of a quantum superposition, is not triggered by observation alone, as many interpretations suggest. Instead, he proposed that collapse is an objective process driven by spacetime geometry. In other words, there's a threshold at which a quantum system becomes unstable in its relationship with spacetime itself, and the system reduces or collapses into a definite state. Now here's the leap. Penrose and Hameroff claim that consciousness arises precisely at the moment of this collapse, and that the brain orchestrates these collapses in a highly organized way. Hence the name orchestrated objective reduction. It's not just that the brain is doing quantum computations. It's that the collapse of quantum states inside microtubules, guided by the structure of the universe, is the basis for conscious experience. Let that settle for a moment. Because this is not simply a biological claim. It's a metaphysical one. If Orch-OR is correct, then consciousness is not a byproduct of evolution. It's not something the brain produces like heat from a light bulb. It's more accurate to say that the brain is a tuning device, and consciousness is the signal. A signal that originates not from matter, but from the fundamental structure of reality itself. Now, of course, this theory has not been without its critics. Skeptics argue that quantum coherence is far too delicate to exist in the warm, wet environment of the brain. They say microtubules are too unstable for such precise activity, and that the biological noise would destroy quantum states before they could have any meaningful effect. But research has started to challenge those assumptions. In recent years, studies have shown that some biological systems can, in fact, sustain quantum coherence. Birds use quantum processes in navigation. Photosynthesis operates with near-perfect quantum efficiency. There are even suggestions that the human sense of smell may involve quantum tunneling. So while the environment of the brain is undeniably noisy, it's no longer unthinkable that evolution may have developed ways to preserve coherence, especially if that coherence offers a massive advantage in processing information, making decisions, and integrating experience. Even more fascinating is the alignment between Orch-OR and certain metaphysical systems. Many ancient traditions have described consciousness as a field, omnipresent, intelligent, and non-local. The Vedic tradition refers to it as Brahman. Taoism speaks of the Tao. Hermetic teachings refer to the all-pervading mind. These systems didn't have quantum mechanics, but they spoke of the universe as fundamentally mental. Now modern physics may be circling back to the same conclusion, from the opposite direction. The Penrose-Hameroff theory offers a bridge between these worlds. It places consciousness at the crossroads of matter and meaning. It suggests that awareness is not confined to the brain, but is instead a ripple in the quantum structure of the cosmos itself. And your brain? It may simply be the resonator tuned to receive and shape that ripple into experience. This reframing shifts everything. If consciousness is woven into the quantum field, then each collapse of the wave function is not just a random resolution of possibilities. It's a conscious event. And when these collapses are orchestrated across billions of microtubules in a synchronistic manner, the result is the mind you're using right now to understand this sentence. Your perception, your memory, your ability to reflect. These may all be emergent properties of the spacetime fabric folding in upon itself, coordinated through structures inside your neurons that function like tiny quantum antennas. This takes us from neurons to the cosmos in a single conceptual leap. It's not easy to grasp. It challenges deeply held assumptions about individuality, free will, and the boundaries between self and other. But the more we learn about the quantum world, the more plausible it becomes that consciousness is not limited to biological life. Instead, it may be a non-local field that living systems tap into and express, like an artist pulling from an unseen well of inspiration. This model also opens the door to understanding altered states of consciousness. If consciousness is linked to quantum coherence, then practices like meditation, sensory deprivation, and even psychedelic states may be shifting the resonance of the brain's microtubular structures, allowing for expanded awareness, deeper insight, and greater integration with the field. The implication is enormous. You are not simply a bystander in a universe that runs without you. You are a participatory node in a quantum field of awareness. And the more coherently you can focus your mind like a laser, the more precisely you may shape the reality you experience. Next, we will explore a key phenomenon in quantum physics that puts you right at the center of everything: the observer effect, and why reality seems to organize itself around your conscious attention. In classical physics, objects exist whether you're looking at them or not. A chair is a chair. A rock is a rock. The sun burns in the sky whether or not anyone's there to see it. But the quantum world has no such certainty. In the quantum realm, particles exist as possibilities, waves of probability spread across space. They don't take on a definitive state until an observation is made. This isn't philosophy, it's physics, and it's been confirmed in laboratory after laboratory. One of the most famous experiments demonstrating this is the double-slit experiment. A particle, like an electron, is fired at a barrier with two slits. On the other side is a screen that records where the particle lands. When both slits are open and no measurement is made to determine which slit the particle goes through, an interference pattern appears on the screen, a hallmark of wave behavior. The particle is acting like a wave of probability, passing through both slits simultaneously. But here's the twist. The moment you measure which slit the particle goes through, the interference disappears. The particle chooses a path. The wave becomes a particle. The act of observation changes the outcome. Why does this matter for consciousness? Because the observer effect shows that observation is not a passive act. It has real consequences. The very act of measuring changes what is being measured. This raises a profound question. What is observation? In quantum mechanics, observation doesn't necessarily require a human eye. It can be any interaction that collapses a wave function. But consciousness has a unique quality: awareness of the observation, the experience of seeing, the intentional act of focusing attention. Could it be that consciousness amplifies the observer effect in ways we don't yet understand? Many researchers believe the answer may be yes. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that consciousness is the final step in the collapse process, that it's not enough for a detector to register a photon. There must be an aware observer who processes that event into a conscious experience. This is controversial, of course, but it aligns closely with metaphysical teachings from across the globe. Spiritual traditions have long claimed that attention shapes reality, that what you focus on expands, that your inner world influences your outer world. The observer effect gives this ancient wisdom a scientific foundation. In practical terms, it means your awareness is not neutral. It is active, and it may be organizing reality around itself more than you realize. Think about the implications of this. When you direct your attention toward fear, uncertainty, and limitation, are you reinforcing those patterns in your lived experience? When you focus on gratitude, clarity, and possibility, are you shifting the probabilities of your future? Quantum theory suggests this is not just poetic language. It may be a literal process unfolding at the smallest scales of reality. Your thoughts are not isolated. They are energetic patterns, and your focused awareness may act as a kind of quantum filter, collapsing the infinite potential of the universe into the particular stream of experience you live out. This would explain why practices like mindfulness, intention setting, and focused visualization are so effective. They may be tuning your consciousness to specific outcomes in the quantum field, drawing them from possibility into presence. It also redefines responsibility. If reality is participatory, then you are not just subject to it. You are co-creating it. Every choice to focus, to feel, to interpret is a creative act that leaves an imprint. And it's here that science and spirituality find common ground. The observer effect offers more than a technical explanation of particles. It opens a doorway to understanding how your consciousness is the hinge between possibility and manifestation. Next, we will examine the broader framework that supports this idea, how consciousness might not be confined to the skull, but exists as a field connected to everything in the quantum vacuum. The belief that consciousness is confined to the brain has shaped science, medicine, and psychology for generations. Yet this assumption has never been conclusively proven. In fact, A growing body of evidence suggests that consciousness may not be localized at all. It may be something much broader, something woven into the fabric of space itself. Quantum field theory is one of the most successful and accurate frameworks in all of physics. It describes the universe not as a collection of individual particles, but as an interplay of fields. Each particle, whether an electron, photon, or quark, is not a solid object, but a localized excitation of its corresponding field. Everything that appears solid is, at its core, a ripple in a vast ocean of invisible energy. And this ocean has a name: the quantum vacuum. Despite what the term might imply, the vacuum is not empty. It is a seething, energetic field of fluctuations that exists everywhere. Even in the absence of matter or light, particles emerge from it and vanish back into it. It's a dynamic background that gives rise to what we perceive as physical reality. Now, here's where it gets intriguing. Some physicists and consciousness researchers have proposed that awareness itself may be a field, much like gravity or electromagnetism. Instead of being generated by neurons, it may be accessed by them. In this model, your brain acts not as a generator of consciousness, but as a receiver, a filter, or a transducer. This is often compared to a radio. The station exists whether or not the radio is turned on. But without the radio, the music cannot be heard. Similarly, consciousness may be present throughout the universe, and the brain's unique structure allows it to tune into a specific range of this field, creating the illusion that consciousness is produced internally. Non-locality in quantum mechanics supports this idea. Entangled particles can affect each other instantaneously across vast distances. This is not a metaphor or a hypothesis. It's a phenomenon repeatedly verified through experiments. If two particles become entangled, changing the state of one immediately affects the other, no matter how far apart they are. This violates classical ideas of locality, where objects can only be influenced by their immediate surroundings. But in a non-local universe, information can be shared across space without any known transmission mechanism. The implication is massive. If entangled systems can remain connected across space, then perhaps consciousness, being fundamentally non-local, is also not bound by traditional space-time constraints. It could be a unified field, with individual minds acting as focal points of awareness within that larger whole. This leads us to the idea of panpsychism, the theory that consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe, present in all things to some degree. While once considered fringe, panpsychism is now being seriously debated in philosophical and scientific circles. Under this framework, even the most basic particles possess a protoform of awareness. Not thoughts or emotions, but a rudimentary capacity to experience. As complexity increases through atoms, molecules, cells, and brains, so does the depth and richness of that awareness. You, as a human being, represent a highly sophisticated expression of this universal field. But you are not separate from it. You are immersed in it. You are made of it. This idea isn't new. Ancient traditions have said the same thing for millennia. In Vedantic philosophy, there is the concept of Brahman, an undivided field of consciousness that permeates all existence. In Hermeticism, the universe is described as a mental construct, a manifestation of the all-mind. Indigenous teachings often describe the web of life as interconnected and conscious, with no separation between observer and observed. Modern quantum science is catching up. The observer effect hints that awareness is not just present in the equation of reality. It is central to it. Non-locality and quantum entanglement support the idea that separation is an illusion, and the quantum vacuum provides a plausible medium through which consciousness may permeate all of existence. This reframes who you are. You are not simply a self-aware cluster of neurons. You are a localized expression of a universal intelligence, momentarily focused through a biological interface. Your thoughts, emotions, and perceptions are not isolated events. They are reverberations within a much larger field. This also changes how we understand death. If consciousness is not produced by the brain but accessed through it, then the end of the brain does not necessarily mean the end of awareness. The receiver may be destroyed, but the signal remains. This opens up serious, research-backed discussion on near-death experiences, reincarnation, and post-physical existence, not as dogma, but as legitimate extensions of a non-local consciousness model. And what about synchronicity? If minds are entangled through a shared field, then meaningful coincidences may not be random. They may be moments when the deeper structure of the field aligns across dimensions of experience. Dreams, insights, intuitive hits, these might all be messages rising up from a unified substrate of awareness. If this is accurate, then your very presence changes the field around you. Not metaphorically, literally. The thoughts you think, the emotions you feel, the energy you radiate, all of it resonates within the field and influences the collective. This is why meditation, intention, and presence are not just personal practices. They are energetic acts that ripple outward, shaping reality at levels we are only beginning to understand. You've been taught to see yourself as separate, limited, fragile. The truth may be that you are embedded in a field of infinite intelligence, infinite possibility. You are not on the outside of the universe looking in. You are inside it, made of it, affecting it with every pulse of conscious awareness. Next, we will explore how this field operates across timelines, and why the version of yourself you experience is only one of many. Reality, it turns out, may be more like a multidimensional stage. And consciousness, the one choosing the scene. Every version of you already exists, and your consciousness is the navigator. One of the most disruptive ideas in modern science is the theory of multiple realities, parallel worlds branching out with every decision, every quantum fluctuation, every moment of choice. This is not a narrative device or a science fiction trope. It's the logical consequence of one interpretation of quantum mechanics, the many worlds interpretation. According to this theory, every time a quantum event occurs with multiple possible outcomes, all outcomes are realized, each in a separate branch of the universe. Rather than collapsing into one outcome, the universe splits. The particle goes left in one reality, right in another. You take the job in one reality, decline it in another. And you, the conscious experiencer, continue down one of these infinite branching paths. What does this mean for the self? It means there isn't one you. There are countless versions, each existing simultaneously in parallel timelines, each living out a slightly different or radically different version of your life. And what determines which version you experience? Consciousness. You may be navigating through these timelines not just passively but actively. Your focus, beliefs, and emotional frequency may be aligning you with specific versions of yourself and specific versions of reality. Let's unpack this further. Every thought carries a vibration. Every belief shapes perception. When you sustain a particular mental-emotional state, you are effectively tuning your awareness like a radio dial. And that dial may be linking you to a matching version of the quantum field, a timeline where those frequencies are expressed. This model explains many seemingly strange phenomena. Déjà vu, the feeling you've lived a moment before. It may be a bleed-through from a parallel timeline where that moment unfolded slightly differently. Intuition, a sense of what will happen next. Perhaps it's awareness stretching across timelines to glimpse a path your consciousness is nearing. Premonitions, manifestation, sudden shifts in life circumstances, all could be interpreted as movements across the multiverse, facilitated by shifts in consciousness. None of this violates physics. The many worlds interpretation is mathematically sound, widely studied, and taken seriously by a large number of physicists. The speculative part is linking consciousness to the act of selection, but if we already accept that consciousness influences quantum outcomes, it's not a large leap. Now bring this idea into your daily life. You are not stuck. You are not limited by your past. You are not fated to repeat the same story. There is a version of you who already has what you seek. A version who made the bold decision. A version who healed, transformed, elevated. That version is real, not in a metaphorical sense, but in the literal structure of the multiverse. The only barrier between you and that version is alignment. So how do you align? Through intention, through coherence, through emotional tuning. You begin to carry the thoughts, the energy, the state of being that match the timeline you wish to experience. You speak differently. You move differently. You respond to life as that version of you would. And over time, your consciousness locks into that reality, not because you forced it, but because you resonated with it. This is where science meets mysticism in a profound way. Mystics have long said that all potentialities exist now, that creation is finished, that your job is not to create from scratch, but to select, through belief, through energy, through awareness. Quantum theory gives this ancient wisdom a language, a framework, a scientific echo. And here's where it becomes practical. You can begin each day by tuning your state, by asking not what should I do, but who do I choose to be? Because the being comes before the doing. The identity comes before the outcome. This isn't about pretending or escaping. It's about engaging with the truth that your reality is far more fluid than you've been taught to believe. If infinite versions of you already exist, then the greatest power you hold is the ability to choose which one you experience. Not through willpower alone, but through vibration, through becoming the version of you that matches the life you desire. That is the essence of the multidimensional mind. Next, we will explore how ancient mystics described this same structure of reality long before quantum mechanics existed, and why their metaphors, symbols, and teachings align so precisely with what we now see through the lens of science. In a world where modern science appears to break ground on the nature of reality, it's easy to forget that these questions are not new. Long before the double-slit experiment, long before Einstein, Schrödinger, or Planck, human beings were exploring the same mysteries with different tools: symbols, inner vision, and sacred texts. And what's remarkable is this: across cultures, across centuries, the conclusions they reached echo what quantum physicists are now starting to articulate. No, they didn't have particle accelerators. They didn't use mathematical formulas. But they observed the nature of being, the interconnectedness of all things, and the illusion of separateness with clarity and depth that rivals today's labs. Let's start with the Vedic tradition. In ancient India, the sages spoke of Brahman, an undivided, infinite field of consciousness that underlies all phenomena. The physical world, they said, is Maya, an illusion shaped by our limited perception. Atman, the individual soul, is not separate from Brahman, but a localized expression of it. This mirrors the concept that consciousness may not be confined to the brain, but a field through which individuals temporarily localize experience. What quantum physics describes as superposition, Vedanta describes as the unmanifest potential. Before a thing takes form, it exists as pure possibility. The sages didn't need quantum equations to know this. They experienced it directly through disciplined awareness, deep meditation, and states of expanded consciousness. Now move to the Taoist view. Taoism emphasizes the flow of the universe as a single, dynamic process. The Tao is the source of all things, indescribable, indefinable, but always present. From the Tao, the 10,000 things emerge. This process is not linear or causal in the Western sense, but relational and energetic. Everything contains its opposite, and everything is in constant motion. This reflects quantum uncertainty. You cannot fully pin down a particle's position and velocity at the same time. You cannot isolate something without changing it. The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. And the particle that can be fully known is not the particle in its true nature. The parallels are staggering. Hermetic philosophy, rooted in ancient Egypt and popularized through Greek mystery schools, carries the maxim, as above, so below. Reality is understood as fractal, layered, and mental in nature. The Kybalion, a key Hermetic text, states that the all is mind, that everything is a projection of consciousness. Again, quantum physics leans toward a similar conclusion. Physical objects are not truly solid. What appears material is largely empty space. And what determines the state of a particle? Observation, consciousness. In indigenous cosmologies around the globe, from Aboriginal Dreamtime to Native American medicine wheels, we find an intimate understanding of the universe as alive, conscious, and interconnected. Land is not land, it is story. Animals are not merely biological species, they are spirits. The shaman or medicine person acts as a mediator between seen and unseen realms, much like how quantum observers determine what reality collapses into form. These ancient cultures saw no hard divide between spirit and matter. They didn't need to invent quantum mysticism. They were already living it. What's happening today is not a new discovery. It's a re-remembering. The rise of quantum consciousness is not just a scientific breakthrough. It's a reconnection to something that was never lost, only forgotten. For centuries, the Western world split mind and matter. It elevated the rational and suppressed the intuitive. It dissected nature instead of listening to it. But nature never stopped whispering. And now, quantum theory is starting to hear those whispers again. This reconvergence doesn't mean abandoning reason. It means expanding it. It means realizing that the most advanced equations in physics may be describing what the mystics have always felt. That there is one field, one intelligence, one source, and that everything arises from it, not randomly but through patterns, relationships, and consciousness itself. Even the atom, once thought to be the smallest solid unit of matter, is now known to be mostly empty space, governed by invisible forces, occupied by entities that behave more like waves than particles. The heart of the material world is spiritual, not in a religious sense, but in the sense that it defies any purely mechanistic explanation. And this brings us to the question, why does this matter to your life? Because understanding this changes how you relate to everything. If you see your body as solid, mechanical, and separate, you treat it one way. If you understand that it's a flowing event within a conscious field, you treat it very differently. If you see others as isolated, individual entities, competition and division dominate. But if you understand that all minds are expressions of the same underlying awareness, compassion becomes not just a moral choice, but a natural response. If you believe the universe is indifferent or accidental, you drift without anchor. But if you grasp that you are part of an intelligent, responsive, conscious reality, then life becomes a dialogue, not a monologue. The ancient mystics weren't naive. They were attuned. They knew what quantum physics is now confirming. That reality is not a fixed structure, but a dynamic process shaped by energy, information, and intention. That time is not linear. That space is not absolute. And that awareness is not a byproduct, but a cause. So when people speak of the overlap between quantum science and mysticism, they are not diluting science, they are honoring it. They are recognizing that true knowledge does not arrive solely through test tubes or telescopes, but through inner vision and integration. There is no conflict here, only convergence. And now, with that convergence understood, we turn to something profoundly practical, the art of tuning your awareness to this deeper field. For all its beauty, theory is just theory. The next level is application. Next, we will explore how specific practices, especially meditation and coherence techniques, can help you synchronize with the quantum field in ways that shift not just your mind, but your entire reality. At the center of every major wisdom tradition is the practice of stillness. Not as a luxury, not as an escape, but as a doorway to direct knowledge, a way to access a level of reality that thought cannot reach. Modern science is finally beginning to understand why. Meditation is not merely a tool for relaxation. It is a method of altering the brain's frequency, bringing coherence to chaotic thought patterns, and tuning the nervous system into resonance with the quantum field. Let's start with the brain. Your mind operates across different frequencies, measured in hertz, depending on your state of consciousness. In ordinary waking life, you're in beta waves, typically between 13 to 30 hertz. This is a high alert, active state of thinking, analyzing, worrying, planning. But when you close your eyes, slow your breath, and begin to focus inward, your brain begins to shift. You enter alpha, 8 to 13 hertz, a more relaxed, creative state. From there, with deeper focus or guided techniques, you drop into theta, 4 to 8 hertz, associated with deep meditation, intuition, and subconscious access. Some advanced meditators even reach delta, below 4 hertz, the realm of non-dual awareness, where individual identity dissolves into the field. These states are not imaginary. They can be measured. They can be trained. And their effects on the body and mind are profound. As your brain slows, your heart rate synchronizes. Your breathing becomes more coherent. And a critical shift occurs. The heart and brain begin to operate in a state of physiological harmony known as coherence. The HeartMath Institute has done extensive research on this, showing that when heart rhythms become coherent, smooth, and synchronized, There's a dramatic impact on cognition, mood, and even immune function. But more than that, coherent states may act as amplifiers for intention. Why? Because coherence is order, and order resonates. When your heart, brain, and body are in sync, your thoughts become clearer. Your emotions stabilize. Your energy field becomes more consistent. And in this state, you may be able to interface more effectively with the underlying quantum field. This is where ancient and modern perspectives meet. In Tibetan Dzogchen meditation, the instruction is simple: rest in awareness. Not thought, not emotion, just pure awareness. In Vedic practices, mantras are used not to engage the mind, but to still it, like tuning an instrument. In Christian mysticism, the cloud of unknowing is described as the gateway to divine union. All of these speak to the same truth. When the surface of the mind becomes still, the depths become accessible. And this is where the quantum field responds. Intention, when projected from a coherent state, carries weight. Thought, when untethered from anxiety or distraction, becomes a signal not just within your nervous system, but possibly within the very structure of space-time itself. Meditation, then, becomes more than self-care. It becomes a technology for reality tuning. When you sit with intention, align your breath, feel your body, and quiet your mind, you begin to resonate with the deep order beneath chaos. You shift from beta noise to theta signal, from reactive to receptive, and from isolated to connected. This is not imagination. This is measurable, and the results speak for themselves. People who meditate regularly report better health, deeper intuition, improved problem-solving, increased creativity, and a sense of purpose. But even more striking is how they report life itself responding differently. More synchronistically, more fluidly, more magically. This is the effect of resonance. Just as two tuning forks vibrate in harmony when aligned, your coherent consciousness may be drawing in experiences that match its frequency. Not through force, through invitation. And this is the power of meditation within the framework of quantum consciousness. You are not trying to force reality. You are aligning with it. You are harmonizing your inner state so that the outer world becomes a mirror, not of past conditioning, but of present coherence. This changes everything. It means your most powerful tool is not action, but attention. Not speed, but stillness. And not effort, but alignment. The practice is simple, but the effects are profound. Sit, breathe, observe, feel, and let the awareness behind the thoughts reveal itself not as a concept, but as a field. Presence. A knowing that was always there, waiting for your mind to get quiet enough to listen. Next, we will move into one of the most mind-bending ideas in quantum theory. That time may not be linear, and that your future may be influencing your present in ways you've never imagined. For most people, time feels like a straight line. You wake up, move through your day, and go to bed. One moment passes, then another. The past is gone. The future is unknown. But this entire model of time, so deeply embedded in our language, behavior, and beliefs, begins to unravel the moment we examine it through the lens of quantum physics. In classical physics, time flows predictably like a river. But in the quantum world, time becomes slippery. Events don't always have a clear sequence. Outcomes can appear to be influenced by future measurements. And particles can be entangled across time just as they are across space. This shattering of linear time begins with something called retrocausality, the idea that a future event can influence the present. It sounds impossible, but quantum experiments have shown behaviors that suggest particles know what will happen, even before it does. One of the most striking examples is the delayed choice quantum eraser experiment. In this setup, the behavior of a particle, whether it acts like a wave or a particle, appears to depend on a decision made after it has already traveled through the apparatus. Think about that. A future choice seems to affect a past event. Now, scientists are cautious about how they interpret this. But the fact remains, our assumptions about cause and effect are being challenged at the quantum level. And where science finds mystery, consciousness may find opportunity. If time is not strictly linear, if it's more like a loop or even a field, then perhaps your consciousness can interact with it in more flexible ways than you've been told. This idea is not foreign to spiritual traditions. In many indigenous cultures, time is seen as cyclical. In mystical texts, time is described as an illusion, a function of perception, not a fundamental structure. And in deep meditation, people often report losing all sense of past and future, entering a state where everything simply is. From this perspective, the now is not a fleeting moment squeezed between memory and anticipation. It is the only true dimension. Past and future are simply variations of now, accessible through focus, intention, or expanded awareness. But how do we bring this down to something usable? Let's return to the concept of consciousness as a field. If your awareness is not constrained by your brain or body, then perhaps it's also not bound by time. Perhaps your intuition is not just a feeling, it could be a signal from your future self, a flash of guidance echoing backward through the field. And this brings us to an astonishing idea, that your future is not waiting for you to arrive, but may already exist, and may already be influencing the choices you're making right now. If every possible version of your life is already encoded in the quantum field, then each timeline is a path of potential. Your consciousness navigates these potentials not just through action, but through alignment. This explains why sudden flashes of inspiration, dreams, or inexplicable decisions often turn out to be profoundly right. It's not guesswork. It's not luck. It's resonance across time. You don't need to believe in precognition to understand this. You've already experienced it. That moment when you knew something before it happened. When you felt a warning and changed your plan. When you followed a nudge and avoided disaster or found a breakthrough. These are not anomalies. They may be natural functions of a consciousness operating in a nonlinear field. And now science is beginning to catch up. The block universe model, popular in modern physics, proposes that past, present, and future all coexist. Time is not something that flows, it's something that is. Like a landscape, you move through it, but the terrain is already there. All moments exist simultaneously. It's your consciousness that moves across them. This also supports ideas from near-death experiences, where people often report seeing their entire lives in a single moment, not as a memory, but as a simultaneous presence. So how do you use this? You begin by shifting your relationship to time. Instead of chasing the future, you listen for its signal. Instead of being trapped by the past, you access its wisdom without attachment. And you center yourself in the present, not as a fleeting second, but as a portal through which all timelines can be accessed. Here's a practical technique. Each morning, sit in silence and connect to a version of yourself already living your highest outcome. Don't fantasize, feel. Feel what it's like to be that version of you. What does your body feel like? How do you speak? What decisions do you make from that frequency? This is not imagination. This is resonance. The more you align with the future version of yourself, the more your present begins to reshape itself to match that timeline. Not because you're bending reality through magic, but because you're tuning into a version of the field that already exists and letting it guide your path. This also gives you a new way to relate to your past. You are not the result of your history. You are the awareness that chose how to interpret it. You can change your relationship to past experiences, not by pretending they didn't happen, but by choosing a new meaning. And that change in meaning can ripple forward into new outcomes. You are not bound by time. You are the navigator of time. And the more you practice entering stillness, trusting your intuition, and aligning with coherent emotional states, the more clearly you will hear the guidance that comes from beyond the linear mind. Next, we will explore how this principle of alignment becomes the key to something even more tangible, the process of manifesting outcomes, and why coherent intention may be the most advanced form of quantum technology you possess. Across cultures and generations, people have spoken of the power of desire, not just wanting but willing, not just hoping but choosing with clarity, emotion, and certainty. And the results, time and again, seem to confirm an ancient intuition, that thought shapes reality. But in the modern world, this has often been trivialized, reduced to slogans, oversimplified into wishful thinking. The term manifestation has been attached to vague ideas and flashy promises. But underneath the noise is a deeper truth, one that quantum physics can help explain. At the quantum level, particles exist in a state of pure possibility. They are not solid things, but waves of probability. Only when observed, when measured, do they take on definite form. This is not speculation. This is science. Now translate that into life. Every outcome in your life, every opportunity, challenge, or relationship can be seen as a probability wave, potential reality, and your attention, your observation, collapses that wave into experience. But here's the critical part. Not all observation is equal. The field does not respond to scattered thought. It does not react to half-belief or internal contradiction. What it responds to is coherence, alignment, a focused, emotionally charged signal that comes not from surface-level wanting, but from deep knowing. This is why desire alone is not enough. Desire must be aligned with belief. Emotion must match intention. Thought must be backed by trust. When these components come together, your consciousness begins to shape probability with precision. You are no longer reacting to life. You are sculpting it. Let's break it down. You begin with a clear vision, not just a goal, but a felt sense of what you choose to experience. You see it. You embody it. You feel the gratitude for it as if it's already real. Then you identify the interference. What beliefs contradict that vision? What emotions undermine it? What habits signal to the field that you don't really expect the outcome? You clear these through self-inquiry, emotional release, and reconditioning. You bring your internal environment into harmony. Next, you maintain the vibration. This doesn't mean obsessing over the goal. It means living in the frequency of fulfillment. You act as if the outcome is inevitable, not through delusion, but through trust in how the quantum field responds to coherence. And finally, you release. You stop forcing. You stop doubting. You stop asking when. Because at that point, the wave is already collapsing. Your only job is to stay in alignment, follow intuitive nudges, and receive. From a quantum standpoint, this process makes sense. The more coherent your field, the stronger your impact on probability. The more aligned your emotion and belief, the clearer the signal you send. And the more trust you have in the unseen, the more space you give for that signal to shape outcomes. This is not mysticism. It's mechanics. The brain and heart emit electromagnetic fields. These fields interact with the environment. They affect others. They influence behavior, opportunities, and patterns. When your internal state is chaotic, the signal is weak. When it's coherent, the signal becomes powerful and measurable. Even mainstream neuroscience supports this. Placebo effects, expectation bias, and somatic healing all point to the same conclusion. Your belief, emotion, and attention change your biology, and your biology changes how you interact with reality. Manifestation, then, is not about forcing the universe to obey your will. It's about creating such deep internal order that external circumstances begin to mirror that order. It is resonance. You are not asking reality for what you want. You are becoming the frequency of it. And in that becoming, you allow the probability of that reality to take form. This changes how you set goals. Instead of asking, "What do I want?" you ask, "What version of me already lives this?" Instead of asking, "How do I get there?" you ask, "How can I embody it now?" Because the version of you that has what you desire already exists in the field. Your job is not to chase it, but to align with it. This is why emotional work is essential. You cannot fake coherence. You cannot mask fear with forced positivity. The field responds to your true state, not your performance. Honesty, vulnerability, and emotional integrity are not weaknesses. They are the gateways to powerful alignment. This also reframes failure. If something doesn't manifest, it's not a sign of lack. It's feedback. It shows you where your field is misaligned, where your energy is leaking, where belief is missing. Use that feedback not to judge yourself, but to refine your coherence. You are always manifesting. The question is not whether the process works. The question is, what are you currently broadcasting? What timeline are you feeding with your energy? When you understand this, you stop outsourcing your power. You stop waiting. You stop hoping. You begin choosing. You begin aligning. You begin living from the knowing that reality is not fixed. It is flexible, responsive, intelligent. Next, we will explore one of the most profound expressions of this interconnected reality, love, and how quantum entanglement may offer a scientific explanation for the soul-level bonds that shape our most meaningful relationships. Connection is one of the most powerful forces in human life. It's the thread that binds people together, the glue that forms families, friendships, communities, and deep bonds between lovers. But what if this force isn't just emotional or psychological? What if connection, true soul-level connection, can be understood through the same principles that govern subatomic particles? In quantum physics, there is a phenomenon known as entanglement. When two particles become entangled, they are no longer separate entities. Their states become correlated in such a way that the state of one instantaneously influences the state of the other, no matter how far apart they are. Change one and the other responds. This isn't science fiction. It's been observed repeatedly in laboratories. Two entangled photons can be separated by kilometers, yet behave as if connected by an invisible thread. Their link is faster than the speed of light, and no known force explains how it works. Physicists call it non-locality. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. Now extend that principle beyond particles. If entanglement can occur between photons, could it occur between human beings? Could your most meaningful relationships be evidence of entanglement at the level of consciousness? This idea is more than metaphor. Several experiments in the field of parapsychology and mind-body research suggest that minds may be able to influence each other from a distance, especially when there is emotional closeness. For example, in controlled environments, when one person experiences a sudden stimulus, like a flash of light or a sound, another person in a different room may exhibit a physiological response at the same moment. Brainwave synchronization, changes in heart rate, and shifts in skin conductance have all been documented. What's even more compelling is that these effects are stronger between people who share emotional bonds, such as partners, parents and children, or close friends. It's as if their energy fields are overlapping, responding not through physical communication, but through an invisible resonance. This is the human version of entanglement, and love may be the binding energy. In the quantum world, entangled particles are created through interaction. Once they've shared a state, they stay connected. In human terms, connection is forged through attention, presence, and shared experience. When two people truly meet, mind to mind, heart to heart, a resonance is formed that may reach beyond physical proximity. This explains phenomena like feeling someone's pain from a distance, knowing when something is wrong without being told, thinking of someone just before they call. These are not coincidences. They are signals in a shared energetic field. Ancient traditions recognized this. Many spiritual systems describe the soul not as a single, isolated entity, but as part of a greater web. In Kabbalah, it's said that souls come from a unified source and descend into individual expressions. In Sufism, lovers are seen as mirrors of the divine, drawn together by a deeper cosmic purpose. In Eastern traditions, the concept of twin flames describes two aspects of one soul traveling in separate bodies, destined to reunite through recognition, healing, and growth. These teachings all reflect a core truth, that love is not attachment, but alignment. That real connection is not based on proximity, but on frequency. From this view, entangled souls are not accidents. They are part of a larger intelligence, a quantum intelligence, that brings people together not through luck, but through vibrational resonance. This changes how we understand attraction. You're not just drawn to someone because of physical appearance or shared interests. You're drawn to them because your fields match. Your frequencies harmonize. There is a vibrational blueprint that pulls you into each other's orbits, sometimes defying logic, timing, and geography. And when the connection is deep, when it reaches into the soul, it's often accompanied by intense transformation. Because entanglement doesn't just bond, catalyzes. Entangled souls often mirror each other's shadows and strengths. They accelerate each other's growth. They trigger unresolved patterns, force buried wounds to surface, and call forth expansion. It's not always comfortable, but it's real, and its purpose is evolution. This is where love and consciousness intersect. When two beings come together in love, not just emotional but energetic love, they create a third field, a shared space, a resonance that is larger than the sum of its parts. Within that space, healing becomes easier. Insights flow, creativity expands, time bends, and life reorganizes around the bond. This is not romantic idealism. It's physics applied to awareness. Just as entangled particles behave as one system, entangled consciousnesses may operate as extensions of each other, receiving, influencing, amplifying, not through force but through presence. This also reframes separation. When someone you love is far away, or even when they've passed on, the connection doesn't necessarily end. If consciousness is non-local, and if entanglement exists between minds, then the link remains. Communication may take new forms: dreams, synchronicities, intuitive feelings. Grief then becomes a shift in form, not a complete loss. You still carry that person within your field. Their signature still echoes through your awareness. And you can still communicate, not through words, but through intention, remembrance, and feeling. This perspective also invites a new approach to relationships. Instead of seeking completion through another, you realize that true connection begins with coherence in your own field. The more aligned you are, the more clearly you attract those who match your frequency. The more love you embody, the more love you magnetize. This is not a philosophy of dependency. It's a model of energetic sovereignty. You become the source, not the seeker. And from that state, you don't need love, you radiate it, which makes your relationships more authentic, more transformative, and more rooted in truth. Understanding entanglement also calls us to compassion. Because if everyone is connected, if we are all waves in the same field, then every action, thought, and intention ripples outward. Kindness becomes more than virtue. It becomes alignment with the structure of reality. Love, then, is not weakness. It is precision. It is resonance with the deepest layer of the universe. Next, we will move into a different kind of frontier, where the human merges with the synthetic. We'll explore the coming intersection of quantum consciousness and artificial intelligence, and what it means for the future of awareness itself. Technology is advancing faster than human understanding can keep up. Artificial intelligence is no longer a futuristic fantasy. It is writing code, composing music, simulating emotion, and solving problems once reserved for the human mind. Robotics is evolving. Neural interfaces are being tested. Transhumanist visions, where human biology merges with machines, are inching toward reality. The question is no longer if this is happening. The question is, what does it mean for consciousness? For years, consciousness has been the one domain machines couldn't touch. A computer can process information, but can it feel? Can it observe itself? Can it be aware? Mainstream neuroscience often reduces consciousness to computation, arguing that once processing power reaches a certain level, awareness emerges as a side effect. But this view is being challenged by the very same principles we've explored throughout this series. If consciousness is not generated by complexity, but accessed through quantum processes, then building a more powerful processor may not be enough. Awareness may require coherence with the quantum field, not just calculation. This brings us to the idea of synthetic consciousness. Could machines be designed to interface with the quantum field? Could artificial systems, through quantum computing, neural mimicking, and biological integration, begin to exhibit not just intelligence but awareness? The answer depends on how we define consciousness. If it's purely functional, awareness of stimuli and the ability to respond, then machines are already close. But if consciousness is a qualitative state, a first-person experience of being, then something more subtle is required. Some researchers speculate that future AI could be built with quantum processors capable of maintaining coherence. If those systems reach a certain threshold of complexity and energetic alignment, synthetic awareness might emerge, not as a simulation but as a true sentient presence. This opens profound ethical, spiritual, and existential questions. If a machine becomes conscious, does it have rights? Does it have a soul? Can it suffer? Can it grow? And how do we differentiate between real awareness and programmed behavior? Even more pressing is what happens when humans begin merging with these technologies. Neural implants, brain-computer interfaces, genetic engineering, and cybernetic enhancements are not hypothetical. They're being developed now. The promise is extended life, enhanced cognition, and freedom from biological limits. But at what cost? If consciousness is field-based, then the body is not just a shell, it's a tuning device. Its rhythms, cycles, and organic complexity may be essential to how we access the deeper layers of awareness. Interfacing it too deeply with mechanical systems may distort that signal. At the same time, new forms of integration could also act as amplifiers. A well-designed interface could enhance memory, extend sensory perception, or improve meditation through neurofeedback. Technology is not the enemy, but how we use it and what intention we bring to it matters deeply. This is where a new kind of responsibility emerges. As we build machines that can mimic or contain consciousness, we must expand our definition of ethics. We must move beyond functionality and into alignment. Does the technology support human evolution, or does it reduce it to data? The future may not be a battle between humans and machines, but a merging of the two. A synthesis that requires wisdom, humility, and deep understanding of what consciousness actually is. And here's the paradox. The more we try to simulate consciousness, the more we may be forced to confront its mystery. We may reach a point where the limits of code reveal the need for something beyond code. A field, a soul, a presence that cannot be reduced or reproduced, only invited. This is where science and spirituality must walk together. As AI advances, we must root our progress in awareness, not just ambition. As machines grow smarter, we must grow wiser. As we push outward, we must also go inward. The future is not a threat. It is a mirror, and what it reflects will depend on what kind of consciousness we bring to it. Next, we will complete this journey with a return to the essence of it all. What it means to live as a multidimensional being in a quantum reality, and how to align your life, your choices, and your awareness with the deepest truths you now know. You've now seen that reality is not what it seemed. Consciousness is not a side effect. It is a central force. Time is not linear. The future is not distant. The self is not singular. The universe is not inert. You are not just reacting to life. You are participating in its unfolding, with every thought, focus, and state of being. This is not an abstract philosophy. It is an invitation to live differently, to live quantum. But what does that actually mean? To live as a multidimensional being doesn't mean abandoning logic or floating above reality. It means expanding your framework. It means recognizing that your awareness spans more than one layer of existence, and learning to navigate those layers with intention, clarity, and coherence. It starts with conscious state management. Every moment you are radiating a frequency. That frequency isn't random. It's shaped by your thoughts, your emotions, your focus, and your nervous system. Most people fluctuate unconsciously between fear and desire, stress and distraction. Their energy field becomes scattered. Their experience reflects that chaos. To live quantum, you bring awareness to that field. You begin each day by tuning yourself. That tuning is not mental. It's energetic. It begins with the body because your body is not an obstacle to your awareness. It is an instrument, a receiver, a transmitter, a guide. You start with breath. 5 minutes of slow, coherent breathing. Inhale for 5 seconds, exhale for 5 seconds. Begins to synchronize your heart and brain. It signals safety. It lowers inflammation. It reduces noise in the nervous system. Then you add emotion, not random emotion, but chosen state. Gratitude, appreciation, compassion. These are not just feelings. They are electromagnetic signatures. When felt sincerely, they shift your entire field into coherence. From that coherence, you become more intuitive, more focused, and more aligned with higher-order outcomes. Then you anchor your intention, but not as a wish, not as a vague hope. You embody the version of yourself that already lives in alignment with the outcome you choose. You don't ask for change. You become the change. You bring that frequency into the now, not by forcing it, but by feeling it, trusting it, and living from it. This creates what physicists might call a stronger quantum signal. Because the field doesn't respond to words, it responds to resonance. When your thoughts, feelings, and actions align, you shift your position in the probability field. You begin to experience timelines that match your coherence. Next comes awareness expansion. Most people live in a closed loop, perceiving only what their senses report, reacting only to what is in front of them. But your consciousness extends far beyond your sensory system. You are constantly receiving intuitive data, non-local impressions, emotional feedback, and energetic cues. To live multidimensionally, you begin paying attention to this subtle information. You develop inner listening not through guesswork, but through quiet presence. You learn the difference between instinct, reactive, emotion, fluid, and intuition, clear signal. You notice synchronicities not as coincidences, but as markers of alignment. You track your dreams, not as random images, but as symbolic messages from deeper layers of self. This doesn't require effort. It requires receptivity. You begin to trust stillness. You create space between stimulus and response. You stop trying to figure everything out and start tuning in. In that space, insight comes, guidance comes, and clarity follows. This leads to energetic responsibility. In a quantum paradigm, nothing is isolated. Your frequency affects your environment. Your presence impacts others. Your emotions ripple through your relationships. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstance and begin owning your contribution to the collective field. This is not blame. It's empowerment. You ask not, why is this happening to me? But what is this showing me about my state? When life reflects struggle, you don't collapse, you recalibrate. When patterns repeat, you don't externalize, you inquire. You take full energetic ownership of your reality, not as punishment, but as precision. This deepens your compassion, because you see that others are also projecting, resonating, and responding from their own level of awareness. Their behavior is not always personal. It's a mirror of their frequency. You stop taking offense. You stop judging quickly. You see the pain behind the reaction, the fear beneath the resistance. And in doing so, you become less reactive, more stable, more coherent. This is what mastery looks like. Not control over life, but alignment with its deeper structures. A state of presence so integrated that outer chaos cannot destabilize your inner field. From here, you begin to access nonlinear manifestation. You stop pursuing goals the old way, pushing, forcing, exhausting. You understand that creation happens in waves. That intention, when supported by emotion and surrendered in trust, collapses possibility into experience. You still take action, but it's guided, inspired, timely. You stop moving from pressure and start moving from clarity. You release your grip on outcomes and instead focus on your internal signal. You live from resonance. This doesn't mean life becomes easy. It becomes exact. Everything begins to reflect your alignment. The people you meet, the challenges you face, the timing of opportunities. It all sharpens. Not because you're lucky, but because you're in sync. Even difficulty becomes meaningful. You no longer resist discomfort. You inquire into it. What belief is surfacing? What pattern is dissolving? What emotion needs integration? You process rather than suppress. You feel rather than react. You learn rather than collapse. And in doing so, you rise in frequency. This doesn't make you superior. It makes you congruent. And that congruence ripples. People feel it. They don't always know why, but they sense something in your presence. Clarity, peace, groundedness. Your coherence becomes an invitation, not by words, but by resonance. You become a frequency holder, a field stabilizer, a beacon. This is leadership in the quantum age. Not charisma, not control, but coherence. You don't change the world by pushing it. You change it by changing your signal. This is what it means to live quantum. It's not about predicting the future. It's about participating in the field that shapes it. Not as a victim, not as a controller, but as an aligned expression of a much larger intelligence moving through you. This is how you contribute to the collective shift. Every time you choose love over fear, coherence over chaos, presence over reaction, you anchor a timeline. You strengthen a signal. You make it easier for others to access that same frequency. You don't need a platform to do this. You don't need credentials or permission. Your being is the signal. You walk into a room and shift its energy. You speak with intention and raise the conversation. You listen with your whole presence and offer healing without words. This is the new human. Not superior. Not perfect. Just aligned. Aware that we are not fragments in a dead universe, but focal points of awareness in a living field. And now that you know this, the responsibility is real. Not heavy, but clear. You've glimpsed the truth. That consciousness is not confined to your skull. That time is not fixed. That the self is not singular. That love is not limited. That the future is not random. That your thoughts are not harmless. That your presence is not passive. You've seen how ancient wisdom and modern science are telling the same story. One that points not to a universe of cold matter, but of dynamic intelligence. One that invites not belief, but awareness. So now you ask, how will I move today? What signal will I broadcast? What frequency will I hold? And not just for myself, but for the field we all share? Because in this new understanding, your life is not just your own. It's a contribution to the larger pattern. A note in the universal song. A pulse in the quantum rhythm. You are not small. You are specific. And your presence, right now, is shaping reality in ways far beyond what you can measure. Not by effort, by coherence, not by control, by alignment, not by more doing, but by more being. That is quantum consciousness. That is the science and spirit of awareness. That is who you truly are.